Treasury bonds or CDs. Right now, you're probably eyeing the one with the bigger number on the label, and that instinct is quietly costing you money. Picture a CD paying 3.9% sitting next to a Treasury paying 3.51%. The lower one, the Treasury can actually put more cash in your pocket. If you're reaching for the higher rate without doing the after-tax math, you could be handing away a few $100s a year for the privilege of picking wrong. Here's the decision you're actually facing. You've got cash you want kept safe, $10,000, $50,000, maybe a lot more, and you want it to earn without any real risk of losing it. Both of these options clear that bar, neither is going to blow up on you. So it feels like a coin flip where you just grab the bigger yield and move on. That's the mistake. Because the number on the label is not the number that lands in your account. The answer turns on one variable almost nobody prices in when they're comparing rates, and depending on where you live and what account this money sits in, that single variable can flip the winner entirely. Get it wrong on a big balance held for a few years, and the gap compounds into real money you'll never see. So let's figure out which one actually pays you more for your situation specifically. Let's start with a side-by-side rate comparison, because this is the finding that surprises almost everyone. Treasury interest is exempt from state and local income tax. That's not a loophole or a temporary perk. It's durable federal tax law. CD interest, by contrast, is taxed as ordinary income at both the federal and state level. So we ran the exact numbers from the Schwab and Fidelity worked example. A 3-year CD at 3.9% versus a 3-year Treasury at 3.51%. On paper, the CD wins by almost 0.4 of a point. But now apply California's top state rate of 13.3%. The CD is fully exposed to that tax, so its effective yield drops to about 3.38%. The Treasury keeps its full 3.51% because the state can't touch it. The lower yielding instrument just won. Read that again, because it breaks the intuition everyone brings to this decision. The way you compare them fairly is the tax equivalent yield. You take the Treasury yield and divide it by 1 minus your state marginal rate. That 3.51% Treasury for a Californian is equivalent to a fully taxable 4.05%, so the CD would have to clear 4.05% just to tie. This is official, durable math from the tax code, and it's the single most valuable thing in this video. But here's where it gets practical. You don't want to run a formula every time. So let's build a bar chart of the break-even gap. In a high-tax state, a CD needs to outyield a comparable Treasury by roughly 0.3 to 1.0 percentage points before it actually pays you more. That's your rule of thumb. If a CD is beating a Treasury by only a 0.25 point, the Treasury almost certainly still wins after tax. If it's beating it by a full 1.5 points, the CD probably pulls ahead. Anywhere in that 0.3 to 1.0 band, you have to do the actual tax equivalent calculation because that's the zone where the answer flips. Now, a critical caveat, and this is where a lot of people misapply the rule. This entire tax advantage is worth exactly zero inside an IRA, a Roth, or a 401k because those accounts are already shielded from state tax. It's also worth zero if you live in a no-income tax state, Texas, Florida, Washington, Nevada, Tennessee. In those cases, the Treasury's superpower vanishes, and you're back to simply chasing the higher after-federal tax yield. So the tax flip only fires in one specific setting, a taxable account in a state with income tax. Let's talk about the thing everyone assumes is a tie: safety. Here's a stat call-out worth remembering. Since 1934, no depositor has ever lost a single penny of FDIC-insured money. Not one. So a CD inside the limit is genuinely rock solid. But notice the phrase, inside the limit. FDIC coverage caps at $250,000 per depositor, per bank, per ownership category. A Treasury has no cap at all. It's backed directly by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, the same credit quality, but with no ceiling. For most people with a normal emergency fund, this is a non-issue. Both are equally safe. But cross that $250,000 line and the comparison isn't close. To keep a CD fully insured above the limit, you'd have to chase brokered CDs across multiple banks, tracking coverage categories at each one. Or you buy one Treasury position and the entire balance is backed. No splitting, no spreadsheet of banks. So above $250,000, we lean Treasury purely on the safety math before we even get to taxes. Now, the misconception I most want to kill. People say Treasuries can't lose money. That's only true if you hold to maturity. Let's walk a line chart of what happens if you sell early. Bond prices move opposite to interest rates, and the size of that move is driven by duration. Rule of thumb, for every 1 percentage point rates rise, the price drops by about 1 times the duration. A 10-year Treasury has a duration of roughly 7 to 9 years. So a 1-point jump in rates means a 7 to 9% drop in price if you're forced to sell. That is a real loss on a supposedly safe asset. A CD behaves completely differently on the way out. You break it and pay a fixed, known penalty, typically 60 to 365 days of interest, steeper on longer terms. And here's the counterintuitive part. In a rising rate world, that fixed CD penalty can be cheaper than the mark-to-market loss on selling a long Treasury. The penalty you hate is actually a feature. It caps your worst case at a number you know in advance. The trade-off is liquidity. A Treasury trades any day on the deepest bond market on Earth, so you can always get out. You just accept the market price. A CD you can only break on the bank's fixed terms. Predictable pain versus flexible exit. 2 more hidden costs. Then we decide. First, compounding. Let's put up a compound growth curve. A normal bank CD usually compounds daily or monthly, so its APY reflects your true return automatically. But Treasuries and brokered CDs typically pay simple interest coupons, cash in your pocket twice a year that you have to actively reinvest to compound. If you let those coupons sit idle, a lower-rate compounding bank CD can quietly end up ahead of a higher-rate instrument that you never reinvested. And a warning on the T-bill quote itself. The bank discount yield you see advertised understates the true return. Compare using bond equivalent yield or effective annual yield, never the raw discount quote. Second, and this is the trap, callable brokered CDs. A shiny 4.75% callable CD gives the bank the right to call it back when rates fall, which is exactly when you'd want to keep it. You get stuck reinvesting at lower rates, but you can't force early redemption yourself. That extra yield isn't free money. It's payment for handing the bank an option against you. Unless the premium is large and you fully understand the mechanics, we'd avoid callable CDs entirely. One last piece of durable history. Because both of these instruments share a weakness. Let's look at a line chart of real returns across eras from the Ibbotson historical data, which runs back to 1926 and is about as official as long horizon data gets. 10-year Treasuries returned negative 2.3% per year in real terms from 1941 to 1981, 40 straight years where a safe nominal instrument quietly lost to inflation. Then the regime flipped, and the same bonds returned positive 5.1% per year, real from 1982 to 2020. The lesson: any fixed nominal return, CD or Treasury, lives or dies by the inflation regime, and neither one protects you from it. If your real worry is inflation eating a long-term stash, the honest answer is that neither plain CD nor plain Treasury is the right tool. That's what TIPS and I bonds exist for. They carry built-in inflation adjustment. Keep that in your back pocket. So here's your decision framework by situation. If you live in a high-tax state and this is a taxable account, default to Treasuries and only pick the CD if it beats your tax equivalent yield. Treasury yield divided by 1 minus your state rate. If you live in a no-income tax state, the tax edge disappears. So just take the higher after federal tax yield for your term. If the money is inside an IRA, Roth, or 401k, the state exemption is irrelevant. Chase the highest yield for the maturity you need. If you might need the cash early and you want a known worst case, a bank CD's fixed penalty may beat you. But if you want the ability to exit any day and can stomach market price, go Treasury. If you're certain you'll hold to maturity and you're under $250,000, a top online bank CD is clean, compounds automatically, and often wins at terms under about 2 years. If you're above $250,000, Lean Treasury for unlimited backing without splitting deposits across banks. And if your real fear is inflation over a long horizon, skip both and look at TIPS or I bonds instead. If running the tax equivalent math just changed which one you'd pick, hit like and subscribe so the next money decision gets a lot simpler. Thanks for watching.